Hello and welcome to Oxwide. It's Friday 23rd of July. We've got some cracking films coming up today covering a range of different subjects, including some fantastic material from Louise Orton, one of our mental health nurses, and something of an accomplished boxer as well. First, a bit of trust news though. We have ongoing issues with COVID, as you'll be well aware. Despite all the Freedom Day information that's come out from the government in terms of the lifting of some of the last COVID restrictions, we are still very much in the middle of spread of the Delta variant of COVID. As a result, we are asking everyone in NHS settings to continue to wear masks, to continue to wear appropriate PPE for the clinical setting you're in, to keep focusing on washing your hands and to think about hands, face, space. So, those same general principles we've been drilling into each other all year. This kind of thing, I'm out in the open air, I'm metres away from the nearest person, plenty of fresh air, breeze and sunshine. Good, very, very, very low risks of transmission in these kinds of environments, and I hope you've enjoyed the sunshine and got yourself outside while you can, because that's the best place to be during a pandemic. But for those of us who have to go into indoor spaces, the closer you get to people, the less airflow is, the higher your risk of transmission. So keep that PPE ticking over, keep yourself safe, and if you haven't been vaccinated now for whatever reason and you're able to do so, please get that vaccine, because the link between the vaccines and the protection from severe illness is very, very clear. So make sure you've got yourself protected. Now, for some of our staff, they're still vulnerable, they're still shielding, they might have healthcare conditions that means they're more vulnerable to infection. So I've spoken to people in the last few weeks who've been recovering from cancer, who have long-term neurological conditions, who continue to be very much concerned, and understandably so, about the risk presented to them from COVID. That's part of the reason we should all keep wearing the PPE. It's not just about ourselves, it's about the people we're around. But if you are one of those vulnerable staff, if you're one of the people who can't have the vaccinations at the minute because of what's in them, then have a look on the Ox. There's information on there about the support we can give you if you're vulnerable or someone in your family is vulnerable, if you're shielding or continuing to shield. So have a look on the Ox and we'll keep that updated. We haven't forgotten you. We know we're all in this together. And when I put my mask on to go into a public space, I know we're doing that because we're thinking about others as well as thinking about ourselves. And it's really important that we do keep as one Oxleas family as we work through these really quite difficult stages of the ongoing COVID pandemic. The next thing I wanted to mention, we've talked about PPE and the COVID risk, is about pings. And we've all read about this in the papers, the pingdemic. People love coming up with these phrases these days, don't they? But we have seen a significant number of healthcare staff and staff in other industries affected by being pinged because someone they've been in contact with has got a confirmed COVID infection. Now, the guidance on this is changing regularly. We had fresh guidance for the NHS, and I think in the last 24 hours or so, we've had fresh guidance for other sectors as well. So rather than me say something that might be out of date by the time you get around to watching this, check the Ox for the latest guidance on the use of the NHS COVID app. Check that for what you have to do when you're at work in a clinical setting and how you should respond if you do get pinged because of contacts you've had outside of work. And there are now regimes around testing, etc., that allow people to get back to their vital work as soon as possible. So look on the Ox, follow the guidance and do what you can to keep you and those around you safe. Now that's enough about COVID. What I want to do now is hand over to me at Goldie Leigh, because we were joined last week by NHS England's Chief Nurse for London, Martin Machray, who we'd invited over to Goldie Leigh to see some of the fantastic work that our teams there are doing. So over to Goldie Leigh. We've been joined at Goldie Leigh here today by Martin Machray, who's the Regional Chief Nurse at NHS England for London. I invited Martin here in the first place because I came here a while ago with Oxwide to interview Julie, who is our nurse consultant for Barefoot Lodge, and to talk about the fact that what she was doing was pretty pioneering. And I mentioned it to Martin while we were talking about some regional mental health developments. I said, come along and have a look. And here at Goldie Leigh, we have so many interesting and fascinating teams, whether it's what's happening in Atlas House with learning disability at Tall Trees, through to the community teams that are based here, through to the inpatient services. We run the forensic services at Tilt and Mariposa Lodge and then Barefoot Lodge. It's a really good example of all the things that Oxleas brings together in Bexley and across Greenwich, all these different services catering for people's physical and mental health needs.
First of all, can I say thank you for inviting me? It's been brilliant. For the last 18 months we've all been locked up, we can't get out, and then suddenly to get out in the sunshine to meet staff who've been so life-affirming, so enthusiastic about what they do. And we talked about those things that have made their jobs worthwhile, that made their life tough. and they've been through some tough times, haven't they? By gum, they've been through. But they've come out of the last few months, the last year and a half, thinking, made a difference. I've looked after people, I've saved lives, I've made a difference to the people I serve. And as a nurse or a professional, doctor, a physio, whoever, but nurses today, that means such a lot, doesn't it? That you come out, you become a nurse because you want to look after people, and suddenly you find that's what you've done. And so I take away their enthusiasm, their developed practice, all of those things has been fabulous.
We've met Harriet, Laura, Pippa and Anita, and these are nurses that are specialists in long-term conditions, so respiratory care, heart failure, similar conditions. And they've been sharing their experiences about what it's been like to work as a specialist nurse over the last 16 or so months. They've been reflecting on the first phase of COVID and the second phase, and the long-term impact it's had on their service users.
One of our main roles is helping manage COPD patients in the community, and as part of the work throughout the pandemic we've been managing a home oxygen caseload, and this includes patients who've come home with post-COVID oxygen therapy. So we were just talking about the challenges with regards to that and how this was a completely different cohort of patients than our norm, and actually sort of the psychological and social impact that this has had on the patients themselves.
What we did as a team was to embrace what we had and run with it for our cardiac team. Our cardiac team comprises of the heart failure team and the cardiac rehabilitation team. We had to quickly adapt a service to meet the demands of the pandemic that we had.
With respiratory, a lot of the work has to be done face to face. So throughout the pandemic we've continued to see these patients, and actually now our new challenges are looking at actually this cohort of patients, getting them moving again, because actually we've been encouraging them to be at home, but now we need to get them sort of exercising and getting back to normal life.
We still had referrals coming in throughout the pandemic, especially in heart failure. There was very high amount of patients that were referred to the service. We formed good collaborative links with all the secondary care hospitals, because at this time they needed someone to look after patients in the community. One, because our cardiac patients are very, very at risk of viruses, and not to talk about COVID. So we were like the gatekeepers for our cardiac patients.
And, it's been a sort of a really successful journey, really. It's had its challenges, but we've managed it well. So I think our plan is getting back to our normal cohort of patients and just trying to get them better managed.
It's been such a pleasure to hear from the team. They've been working incredibly hard through incredibly challenging times. For me, who's someone who's mostly office-based, it's been a special treat to come down and hear about the kind of real-life on-the-ground experience that we've heard many times anecdotally in virtual meetings. And I think for me what really struck was the kind of increased awareness and focus on that kind of interplay between physical and mental health, and the real feedback from the diabetes specialists, the respiratory specialists, about just the impact of the pandemic, not only on how they access healthcare or were unable to access healthcare initially until the teams took the offer out to them, but the impact of the fear and the anxiety on their mental health, and how that interplayed with how they ended up with conditions that worsened, and that the teams were able to respond, absolutely worked their socks off, worked in new and different ways, developed stronger, better relationships across their MDTs with consultants. It's just so inspiring.
These teams are tiny. They're 2 to 3 nurses in a team, and they've taken on 60% increase in their referrals. And they've been working in incredibly creative ways and learning about managing a new condition and new ways of having oxygen prescribed for a different cohort of people that they're not used to. And they've done incredibly well. They're just so positive about how they've kept going, and they're a joy to listen to. I'm really impressed, and I'm incredibly proud of them all. They're really specialist nurses working to the top of their licences.
As Joint Chief Nurse for London, can I just say to every nurse here at Oxleas, here at Goldie Leigh, thank you for everything you've done. The city couldn't do without its nursing staff, and you have been absolutely exemplary in everything you've done. So from me, personally, thank you. Really appreciate it.
Thanks to Martin Machray there for joining us at Goldie Leigh and for his kind words. Martin is the regional lead for mental health, and he's also been a great champion for us through the course of the pandemic. So his support for us, both for the nursing profession but also for all people working in mental health, has been fantastic over the last 18 months. So thank you again, Martin. Now, the next piece of film is a smashing, really interesting interview with one of our mental health nurses, Louise Orton, who, when she's not at work, is also a boxer, and she shortly has an upcoming bout at York Hall in Bethnal Green. Lisa Tan took the time to find out a bit more from Louise about what she's got in store.
It began when I was young, when I felt darkness and couldn't see a way out. I'd exhausted all my avenues, but then I found boxing. I'd found my purpose. It's an obsession that has become an addiction. It's a way of life that is ingrained within me. Every day I strive to be the best, push myself beyond my limitations and sacrifice the things that stand in my way, because greatness cannot be achieved without hard work, dedication and determination. Beating the world champion and subsequently winning gold at the Havering Box Cup in 2018, followed by winning the Elite National Championships in 2019, have been my most memorable achievements to date. Turning pro is just the beginning of what's to come. My name is Louise Orton, and it's with broken wings that I learnt to fly.
So, hi Louise, thanks for joining us.
That's all right.
Can you tell us a little bit more, first of all, about your day-to-day role at Rochester?
Yeah, so I work at HMP Rochester in the mental health team as a mental health nurse. So we look after the guys that are in prison that are suffering from acute and enduring mental illness.
And what made you originally take an interest in working in mental health? Did you specifically want to work with young offenders? How was that for you?
So I myself struggled with mental health when I was younger. And I struggled, I went through a few things, and I felt that for me to understand myself, the only way to do that was to learn more about it. So I went to uni, I studied psychology and criminology. I then went on to do my master's in forensic psychology, and then got a job in the prison, because I think if I carried on down the path that I was going down, I potentially could have ended up in prison. And I wanted to kind of be that person to help other people, and to kind of point them in the right direction and show them that anything is possible and that it doesn't have to be this way. There is kind of other options, and you can do things to kind of better yourself, and it's not the end of the world. Kind of sometimes the situations that you feel that you're in, when you don't see a way out, I would like to be that person that kind of shows them and supports them through that period of their life.
Oh, that's great, thank you. And you were an amateur boxer for a number of years, weren't you? But you decided to sort of take the plunge, turn professional. And how different are the two, and how difficult have you found it to sort of juggle your day-to-day job with being a professional boxer?
Yeah, so I went to boxing when I was 18. I transferred over from kickboxing, and I boxed as an amateur for just over 11 years. I then went to professional boxing, and the difference between the two, amateur boxing, where you only do 3 rounds, you generally do 3 3-minute rounds. The rounds are a lot more intense, so your work rate is a lot higher throughout the rounds, and the fights generally can end up looking a bit wild. But as a professional, where you end up doing more rounds, so as a professional I'm doing 6 rounds this time, it's a lot, I say slower pace, but it's more calculated. It's more like a chess game. You throw things to set shots up, you kind of wait, you pick your shots more, rather than in the amateurs, you just kind of throw wildly and throw anything. But yeah, the transition for me, I actually prefer it because my style quite suited professional boxing rather than the amateur boxing. I prefer to sit down on my shots a bit more, and in the pros it is about getting the right shot with the right power. So it's more about focusing on sitting down on your shots and throwing the shots that are going to do damage, rather than just throwing a shot for the sake of it.
And you've got your first professional bout on Saturday, the 31st, haven't you, of this month?
I have, yeah.
Bethnal Green. So
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about that. And do you know your opponent yet?
So my debut is at York Hall, Bethnal Green. Like you said, Saturday the 31st. So this event I've been waiting for since November 2019. So I got my professional licence November 2019. was due to box in February, but the opponent pulled out last minute. So basically my fight was postponed. It was postponed till April, as that was the next available show, but then COVID hit in March. So obviously no boxing happened at all. I was meant to box behind closed doors, I think it was in June, but there was a few bereavements in my family and it was a bit of a difficult time and my head just wasn't in it and it wasn't the right time. So that kind of got pushed to the back burner. So later in the year, again, I was given another date, but that fell through. And then I was due to box again in March, that fell through. And this fight, finally now, I think after about the 8th time of it being moved, touch wood, so far so good. No issues, no one's got COVID, no one's pulled out. So far, touch wood, everything is going ahead. But yeah, I can't wait. It's been a long time coming, a very long time coming. And I've not boxed for just over 2 years. So it's,
wow.
Yeah, exciting, but nervous at the same time where I've got a bit of ring rust.
So women's boxing is now hugely respected and followed by the boxing community. So how far do you think you could go?
So for me, personally, I look at the people that are out there at the moment. A lot of them I already know from the amateurs. And with my kind of determination and my drive, I see myself being world champion by probably the end of next year. There's different world titles that you can go for, different kind of federations which manage different titles as such. But yeah, I'll definitely be going for perhaps like an intercontinental title next year. But yeah, definitely going all the way. I'm in it for the long run.
Brilliant. And would you recommend boxing to anyone for fitness, just taking part competitively, or, you know, what are your views around that?
100%. I think everyone has their kind of their negative thoughts about it, especially in the prison. I tried to get it brought into the prison for the prisoners as a way of kind of giving them some discipline, some kind of fitness skills, and just something to focus on, because that's what helped me. Boxing is what changed my life. But everyone's kind of got the mentality of, oh, it's violence, it's encouraging violence, when it's really not. And what I found, once you start being involved in those types of sport, you're really not interested in any kind of violence outside of the ring. So 100%, I would encourage it massively for anyone who's perhaps struggling with mental health, anyone who's struggling with confidence issues, anyone who wants to get fit, because I mean, for me, it's the best fitness possible. You're not only a boxer, you're a runner, you're a swimmer, you're a weightlifter. There's so many different components that are involved. But yeah, 100%, it's brilliant, and it works every part of your body. So yeah, without a doubt, 100% recommend it.
That's great. And finally, if anybody wants to come and support you on the 31st, are there tickets? How can people come along?
Yeah, so there's tickets available. There's £50 tickets, which are standard seating on the balconies. It's actually a really good view, probably better than ringside view, to be honest. But also there is ringside tickets available for £70. There's a minibus leaving from HMP Rochester, I believe, about 5:15. There's still spaces available. So if anyone is interested in coming to support me, just give me an email, louise.orton@nhs.net, and I'll get back to you with some information.
Brilliant. Thanks very much. And we'll all be rooting for you.
Thank you.
A great interview with Louise there. I'm wishing her all the best the week on Saturday in her first professional bout at York Hall. If you want to be part of the crowd of friends and family cheering her on, do have a look on the Ox and get in touch, and you can be there too. Now, next up, people with learning disabilities often have struggled to get the right kind of care when they present in emergency departments in a crisis, whether physical or mental health. And we're very fortunate to have a team of great learning disability nurses at Oxleas who've been working with their counterparts at Queen Elizabeth Hospital in Woolwich to get this really important element of crisis care for people with learning disabilities right. Over to Lisa Tan now, who's been speaking to Jenny SENTONGO and her colleagues about the work we're doing here.
My name is Jennifer SENTONGO. I'm the Learning Disability Clinical Nurse Specialist based here at Queen Elizabeth Hospital. So our role, we work, like Amy said, we work closely together. It's ensuring that people coming into hospital with a learning disability who may have additional communication needs or support needs are supported adequately, making sure that the journey is smooth for people coming into hospital and people understand their care, making sure that carers and families are involved in that process as well and they receive the appropriate support, just to make the journey short and less stressful. So we generally get referrals across the board really. So it might be somebody with a learning disability who's known to the learning disability services, or it might be somebody with a learning difficulty who's known to social care, for example. And it's across the range of people with autism as well. We get those kind of patients. But it's generally around supporting on the wards. The staff may ask for support around communication aids, for example, supporting that person to understand their care and the pathway. It might be issues around managing behaviours that are difficult. Obviously being in hospital is stressful and distressing, so somebody may be really frightened, so we might get support, asked to provide some support. You know, it's challenging enough for all of us, just trying to work out which area you need to be, understanding where you need to go for a particular investigation, and just having information that's accessible, that allows people to make a choice, to make decisions about how they want to be treated, and being involved in the processes around making decisions about care, capacity assessment, that sort of thing. When we get the referral, we go in and we make sure that the person is feeling safe and comfortable. We make sure that person is able to understand the care and treatment, and the carers are involved in that process, and that the wards or the departments are aware of that person's additional needs. So we're here for the patients, we're here for the families, we're here for the carers. And obviously we work in partnership jointly with Lucian. We also work very closely with the community team. So when somebody comes in hospital, just kind of making sure that we join up as early as possible, just to make sure there are no gaps up to the time when that person is discharged, to make sure there's continuity when somebody leaves the hospital.
Hi, my name's Louise Orton. I'm a complex physical health nurse at CLDT in Greenwich, the Community Learning Disability team in Greenwich. So our role and our links with the hospital would be if somebody was admitted with a learning disability, they might already be on our own caseloads, or they might just be on the register at Greenwich CLDT, and we would then link in with Jenny, hospital liaison nurse, to ensure that all of the reasonable adjustments are made, so that they can have a smooth hospital visit. So the hospital pass month is a document that we give to all of our service users, which can be completed by friends, family, themselves. We would help them complete it if need be, and it's a 3-page document which goes through the things we really need to know about a person, the things we definitely need to know about the person, such as, say, example, communication, how the person communicates whilst in hospital, and their likes, their dislikes, so that when they're in hospital, the hospital staff can read it, and it's a really quick and really quick way of accessing really important information about the person. We would usually find out if somebody was admitted to hospital through Jennifer, or perhaps by the clients themselves if their families or whoever has told us. And then our initial conversation would be with Jenny, and we would then have a conversation about how to support that person best in hospital. It might be that we know them, we've got prior knowledge of them coming into hospital. It might be that they're completely unknown to us, and then we'd have a discussion about what would be best for them in hospital. So it's similar really. Some of our service users might not just come to QE, they might go to the Lewisham Hospital too, in which case we'd tap in with Emma.
My name's Emma O'Donnell. I'm the Learning Disability Clinical Nurse Specialist. I work at University Hospital Lewisham, and I work under the safeguarding team. I cover Lewisham Hospital, but we work closely to develop pathways to provide reasonable adjustments for people with a learning disability when they access the hospital, and we also provide training for all staff. So we have a lot of training that we're rolling out to all staff in all areas and departments, and we also have learning disability champions who we've just done some training for, so we're hoping that will be a more robust support network for those patients accessing the services. We are definitely working really hard to get all those pathways, and we're also developing a policy which will be for the trust, so everyone accessing the hospital will have a really clear idea of the staff will know exactly what their role is.
Thank you to Lisa for a great interview there with that learning disability team, and thanks to colleagues at QE for being part of that really important work. Oxwide has been running now for around a year. It came out of the COVID broadcasts that we started last year, because with so many of our staff working in so many settings and people being at home, we realised that video was a great way of communicating with you, and Oxwide has been a way of us continuing with that. This is my last one because I'm moving on to a new role in a couple of weeks' time. But it's a good opportunity, I think, for me and Lisa, and Lisa's been very much our roving reporter for Oxwide, to have a reflection over some of the highlights of the past 12 months. So, Lisa, with me moving on, you're going to be having a series of guest presenters alongside you, is that right?
Yeah. From now on, Iffy and I will be interviewing various different people, and it's been a great year. So it's been a really, we've learnt a lot, I think, and we've got some great stories to tell and lots more to come. So it'll be really good.
What's been some of your highlights then?
Well, I think for me, definitely Mason, the therapy dog at the Bracton Centre. He was lovely, really, really lovely, and you could feel straight away, you could understand straight away how he would make people feel immediately relaxed and break the ice. So he was lovely. There's been some brilliant things. I mean, we've been down to the anniversary for the 136 suite down at Oxleas house with Kehinde and the team, and that was great. It's just really nice to get out and talk to people and be able to, bring some of the stories from across the trust to everybody.
Yeah, I'd agree. I mean, I remember one of the first ones we did was at Queen Mary's, and James Brokenshire joined us and Andy Trotter, so we could say thanks to some of the volunteers who've been working through COVID. And some of those first broadcasts, it was quite an emotional time, I think, for everyone, because we were just starting to come out of lockdown and find our way through. And then things like learning CPR with Nick Stacey, and the ASD assessments we've done up at Memorial. And I've always, personally, I always really enjoy anything with music. I remember Sarah Hadley taking us around the fantastic music therapy service there. And then I think it was at Christmas where we did a couple of carols there as well. Up there in the space outside High Point, just being able to get together with people after such a long period in which we've all been separate. It's been a great way of bringing people together, hasn't it?
Yeah, there's been some great footage of the choir as well.
Yeah.
And the awards ceremonies too, they've been really, really good.
Yeah,
it's been lovely.
I remember us hiding in bushes ready to surprise people as they came out of various Oxleas sites, and then turning on Steve as well and presenting him with his award as well. I remember he was very grateful for that. So we want teams to get involved, don't we? We want people to come forward. So what are we looking for, Lisa?
Well, variety. We know that there are lots and lots of teams across the trust that we'd like to share their news and their work with everyone, because Oxwide goes externally as well, so we'd like to share outside. And so if people can get in touch with us in comms, we'd love to come out and visit them, do an interview, and it's very simple, very straightforward, and it's just like an informal chat but with a camera.
And I know you and Steve are great at putting people at their ease as well, so I'm sure you'll go from strength to strength. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's it from me now then. So thanks very much to Steve and all the comms team who've made Oxwide such a great part of our work in the last 12 months. And thanks very much to all of you for allowing me to be part of the Oxleas family for the last 3 years. I'll probably send a farewell message in the course of the next week, so I'm not going to say too much more now. But enjoy your weekend, and I'll see you all again at some point soon, I hope.